Today, the Mars family controls one of the largest private companies in the world. Their brands include Mars bars, Snickers, M&Ms, Twix, Pedigree, Whiskers, and Royal Canin. Their fortune is worth tens of billions of dollars. Yet the family behind it has spent generations avoiding interviews, cameras, and public attention. But the Mars empire did not begin with wealth. It began with illness, repeated failure, and a broken relationship between a father and son. Franklin Clarence Mars was born in Minnesota in 1883. As a child, he suffered from polio. The illness limited his movement and kept him indoors for long periods. While other children played outside, Frank spent time with his mother, Alva, who taught him how to hand-dip chocolates. That simple childhood lesson gave him an obsession that would shape the rest of his life. Frank wanted to build a candy company, but success did not come easily. He tried several businesses, and several failed. He struggled with money, moved his family, and repeatedly watched his plans fall apart. His marriage also broke down. Frank and his first wife, Ethel Kissack, had a son named Forrest. After the divorce, Forrest lived mainly with his mother. The separation created a distance between father and son that money would never completely repair. Frank continued trying to build a confectionery business. In 1911, he and his second wife, also named Ethel, began making and selling candy from their kitchen in Tacoma, Washington. The business struggled. Frank was competing against established companies with larger factories, stronger distribution, and more money. But he refused to quit. In 1920, the family moved back to Minnesota and established the Maro Bar Company. Frank began experimenting with a new idea. Instead of selling loose chocolates, he wanted to create a bar that tasted like a chocolate malted milkshake. The result was the Milky Way. The bar used whipped nougat, caramel, and milk chocolate. It tasted rich, but the nougat made it cheaper to produce than a solid chocolate bar. When the Milky Way was launched nationally in the 1920s, sales exploded. For the first time in his life, Frank Mars was genuinely successful. The company quickly introduced more products. The Snickers bar arrived in 1930 and was reportedly named after one of the family's favorite horses. The Three Musketeers bar followed in 1932. Frank had finally built the business he had spent years chasing. But success brought Forrest back into his life. Forrest was intelligent, ambitious, and determined to prove himself. He had grown up largely away from his father, and the two men had very different personalities. Frank was a product creator. Forrest was a strategist. Frank had finally built a successful American candy company. Forrest wanted to turn it into a global empire. Their disagreements became serious. Forrest believed the company should expand rapidly into new markets. Frank was more cautious. The arguments reopened years of resentment between them. Forrest did not want to remain in his father's shadow. He wanted control, independence, and the chance to build something of his own. Eventually, the two men reached an agreement. Forrest was given the rights to manufacture Milky Way products outside the United States. He left America and traveled to Europe. The decision separated father and son again. But this time, Forrest was not a child being taken away from his father. He was an ambitious businessman preparing to become his rival. In Britain, Forrest studied European confectionery companies and learned how they operated. He worked with established manufacturers and developed a new version of the Milky Way suited to British tastes. In 1932, he launched the Mars bar. The product carried the family name, but Forrest was building the overseas business on his own terms. Then, in 1934, Frank Mars died at the age of 50. The founder of the company never saw how far the Mars name would travel. His death left behind a successful American business, an ambitious son, and a family relationship that had never fully healed. Forrest had inherited his father's determination, but he had also inherited something else, a belief that business came before comfort, approval, and sometimes even family. And under Forrest Mars, the company would become bigger, stricter, and more secretive than Frank could ever have imagined. Forrest Mars did not simply want to continue his father's company. He wanted to dominate the food industry. He believed factories should run with almost military discipline. Waste was unacceptable. Poor performance was confronted immediately. Executives were expected to understand every detail of the business, and employees were judged by results. Forrest could be harsh, impatient, and intimidating, but he was also highly effective. While building the European side of Mars, he began looking beyond chocolate. He believed a family company could not depend on one product or even one industry. In Britain, he entered the pet food market after acquiring a dog food business. At the time, many families fed their pets leftovers. Forrest believed packaged pet food would become a major industry. He was right. Pet food gave Mars something confectionery could not. Chocolate was a treat. Pet food was purchased repeatedly, every week, by loyal customers. The company eventually built brands including Pedigree and Whiskers, and later expanded further into animal nutrition and veterinary care. But Mars's most famous product was created during the Second World War. Forrest had seen soldiers eating small pieces of chocolate protected by a hard sugar shell. The coating helped stop the chocolate from melting. He recognized that the idea could work commercially. In the United States, Forrest formed a partnership with Bruce Murray, the son of Hershey executive William Murray. The initials of Mars and Murray created the name M&M's. The product was introduced in 1941. During the war, M&M's were sold to the United States military because they were easy to transport and could withstand warmer conditions better than ordinary chocolate. After the war, demand spread to the general public. M&M's became one of the most recognizable confectionery brands in the world. But Forrest's partnership with Bruce Murray did not last. Forrest eventually took control. It fitted a pattern that followed him throughout his career. He worked with people when necessary, but he preferred authority to be concentrated in his own hands. Forrest later returned to the family business in America. He combined his own operations with the company built by his father. Mars became a larger, unified family empire. Inside the company, Forrest created a culture based on responsibility and performance. Mars employees were called associates. Managers were expected to work close to the factory floor rather than hide in executive offices. Status symbols were discouraged. Information was shared internally, so employees could understand how the company was performing. But the culture was not gentle. Forrest demanded excellence. He could become furious over poor quality, dirty machinery, or unnecessary waste. His obsession with standards helped Mars grow, but it also made him difficult to work for. The company expanded across confectionery, food, and pet care. Brands such as Uncle Ben's Rice, later renamed Ben's Original, became part of the group. Mars products entered homes across the world. Yet as the brands became more famous, the family became less visible. The Mars family avoided public interviews. They rarely discussed their fortune. The company remained private, meaning it did not have to reveal as much information as businesses listed on the stock market. There were no outside shareholders demanding control. The family could make long-term decisions without explaining every move publicly. Secrecy became one of the company's strongest traditions. The products were everywhere. The owners were almost invisible. That privacy also protected the family from the attention that follows extreme wealth. Some versions of the Mars story have repeated dramatic claims about family kidnappings and internal battles. But the better documented drama was already powerful enough. A father and son had spent years separated from one another. They built different parts of the same empire. Forrest returned and reshaped the family business according to his own demanding vision. The company's success came from innovation, but also from relentless control. By the time Forrest Mars stepped back from active leadership, the company was no longer simply a candy manufacturer. It was a private global organization producing chocolate, food, and pet care products on an enormous scale. The next challenge would be different. Forrest had built a company strong enough to survive him. But now his children and grandchildren had to protect it. And many family empires collapse at exactly that moment. The Mars family faced the same problem that has destroyed many great fortunes. How do you pass a powerful business to the next generation without dividing the family or weakening the company? Forrest Mars had 3 children: Forrest Mars Jr., John Mars, and Jacqueline Mars. They inherited ownership of the company and became some of the wealthiest people in the world. but they followed the family tradition of remaining largely out of public view. They did not turn themselves into celebrities. They did not build personal brands around their wealth. They kept the company private. That decision was crucial. A stock market listing could have raised enormous amounts of money. It would also have brought outside investors, public reporting, and pressure for short-term results. The Mars family chose control instead. Because Mars remained private, the family could reinvest profits and plan years ahead. They could buy businesses that did not immediately appear connected to chocolate. One of the most important areas was pet care. Mars expanded beyond bags of dog and cat food into specialist nutrition and veterinary services. The company acquired major veterinary hospital groups and built a much larger position in animal health. This made the Mars empire less dependent on confectionery. A customer might buy a Snickers occasionally. A pet owner needs food, treatment, and care throughout an animal's life. Mars also continued expanding through major acquisitions. In 2008, it bought Wrigley in a deal worth billions of dollars, adding brands including Extra, Orbit, Skittles, and Starburst to the wider business. The purchase made Mars an even greater force in global confectionery. The family's influence now stretched far beyond the original Milky Way bar created by Frank Mars. Yet the company's secrecy continued. Mars did not publish the same level of financial information as a public corporation. Family members gave few interviews. Their homes, private lives, and disagreements received far less attention than those of other billionaire dynasties. That silence helped create a mystery around them. How could the owners of brands recognized almost everywhere remain so unknown? Part of the answer came from experience. Frank Mars spent years failing before he succeeded. Forrest Mars spent years fighting for control and independence. The family learned that attention did not build factories, improve products, or protect ownership. Privacy did, but secrecy also raised questions. A private company of that size has enormous power. It controls major food brands, pet care companies, and veterinary businesses. Because the family owns the company, the public has limited influence over its decisions. Supporters see this as a strength. They argue that private ownership allows Mars to focus on long-term plans rather than the next financial quarter. Critics argue that a company with so much reach should face greater public scrutiny. The Mars family has also faced the same pressures as every large food manufacturer. Questions about sugar, health, packaging, environmental impact, and supply chains have all become more important. The company has had to respond to concerns about cocoa production, climate change, and working conditions. The family's name may stay out of the headlines, but the business cannot avoid the responsibilities that come with its size. Even so, the Mars empire has survived for more than a century. It began with a child who learned to make chocolates beside his mother. Frank Mars failed repeatedly, lost his first marriage, and spent years struggling to establish a stable company. Then the Milky Way changed everything. His son Forrest carried the name overseas, created the Mars bar, and helped build M&M's. He turned a confectionery business into a disciplined international organization. Later generations protected the company by refusing to sell control. That may be the real Mars family secret. It was not one recipe. It was not one chocolate bar. It was the decision to think in generations. Frank built the foundation. Forrest created the system. His children protected the ownership. And the family remained united around the company, even while remaining largely hidden from the public. Today, millions of people buy Mars products without thinking about the family behind them. They see the red packet of M&M's, the familiar Snickers wrapper, the dog food, chewing gum, or veterinary clinic. But behind those brands is one of the most successful family dynasties in modern business, a dynasty built through failure, conflict, discipline, and secrecy. The Mars family did not become powerful by chasing fame. They became powerful by keeping control. And while other business families fought publicly, sold their companies, or divided their fortunes, Mars remained private. The father and son at the beginning of the story never achieved a simple or peaceful relationship. But together, they created something that survived them both, an empire known across the world, owned by a family most people would never recognize. This has been Old Money Media. Don't forget to subscribe and write in the comments. Let us know what you think and what you would like us to cover next. Until next time, thank you for watching.